Welcome back to the Extra Rep Podcast, guys. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
So we've gone through a list of sort of our favourite or best exercises we recommend in the gym, and now we're going to go through the list of the ones we don't like. So obviously there'll be a bit of nuance to this as well, in terms of age, experience level, etc. But there's a few things here which I think the industry has gone so far towards one side of being so optimal with everything, that a lot of the stuff is just sort of getting left out. People are sort of skipping the stage of, getting strong with your body weight with, basic movements and things like that. So I think there's a few movements we'll cover here, which are probably a bit, like I said, more for advanced people. And if you're more in that sort of beginner intermediate, we'll give you some sort of, strength standards you guys can have a look at before you start going into these, TikTok type, exercises and that. But I guess when you think about strength standards, Liam, what would you say in terms of like your basic person looking to get strong, like a squat, bench and deadlift? What do you like, I guess, your clients to be able to ideally do if they're doing those three?
Well, it depends on the client, right? But if they're doing those three, like form and execution actually becomes more important than anything. Mm-hmm. I'm really biased to a lot of machine work when it comes to that, because a lot of the times, like a lot of the machine work that you'll do will strengthen those muscles that will help then carry over to the squat, the bench, the deadlift, and make it a lot easier for the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's, like I said, it comes down to being person dependent. So like, let's say I have a client who might be like an elderly lady with like some back issues, right? Like my first preference would be to get her deadlifting pain-free as soon as humanly possible, because that's going to probably translate to other areas of her life where, she's getting up off the toilet, bending over, doing those sort of things. Like if we can build strength in those areas, then we can get stronger. And my sort of strength standards for a lot of people, again, depending on if they're doing squat, bench, dead or variations of them, to at least try and get to your body weight. And I think that's a really good sort of platform where if you're not at your body weight yet and like you could do those exercises, I'd probably put most of your programming into just getting them stronger for a period of time before you start to, crazily branch out into other stuff. And of course, there's going to be other exercises into your program that can complement those things as well. But I think, if you're more of a beginner to early intermediate, starting with, some type of squat, bench, deadlift, whether like deadlift, trap bar, normal, Romanian, etc., there's going to be variations. If we can get some sort of variation of each pattern, some sort of pressing pattern, some sort of squat pattern, some sort of hinge deadlift pattern, then I think that's going to work really, really well. But into the first sort of muscle group that we'll go into, chest, and there's just one exercise in chest that I want to cover, which is the plate press. So,
which does absolutely nothing for people. Yeah,
so I think it's good to sort of note, why people would do this. So number one, people are going to say, okay, if I'm squeezing something here and I'm pushing it out in front of me, I can feel my chest contract, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, just feeling a contraction doesn't normally mean that's working. And the problem is a lot of people will do it standing, which again, we think about gravity. If you're pushing something out in front of you, your chest isn't working, right? Even if you're feeling a contraction, it's going to be all through your front delts. Even lying, so when we're lying, it is going to be marginally better, but again, you're going to be very limited by how much weight you can lift. So obviously, a 20 kilo plate, you're doing that with your hands, you're going to be able to hold that. Yeah, you might be able to get a few reps out. And again, it's just going to decrease the range of motion. So when we're doing a dumbbell press, we're trying to adduct away and get a stretch of the chest, and then try and drive back in towards that midline of the chest. So we're basically just cutting the range, in half or a quarter. Even though if we're getting some effective stimulus as a beginner, you could probably progress on it. But the limiting factor there is obviously going to be weight, because you're not going to be able to then get 2 or 3 or 4 and try and press them together, and it's just going to be a nightmare to set up as well.
Yeah, and look, I'd give the same example for dumbbells as well. Like, it is a skill in itself to learn how to control dumbbells, because even though you're holding 2 dumbbells at once, you're technically training unilaterally, because one shoulder could be stronger than the other as you're coming down and executing the movement, right? So a lot of people, as they get really strong, I see people like mess up because they just go really heavy. They lose a lot of fatigue, they lose a lot of strength and actually fatigue themselves just getting the dumbbells up and then executing the movement. They either need a spot or they need to sort of kick back and get into position. And they find they struggle a lot. And that's why something like a machine or a barbell can work. But then there's also one that I don't like when it comes to machines, where it's a neutral chest press, where the handles don't actually move. And what I mean by that is the handles actually just go straight. I find a contraction for a lot of people, they need a machine where the handles are either on an incline and they go in, or it's a neutral, but the handles still come in to contract their chest a lot better. It's actually simulating a dumbbell press because you're bringing those dumbbells together. Think if you were to dumbbell press, but you're just pressing forward in front of you, you're not going to feel much in your chest, right? You're going to feel it all in the front delt. That's why a neutral machine press where the handles just go straight forward, not the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like I said, just you're thinking about the function of the chest. Like think about when you do a push-up, when you do a bench press, anything like that, you're sort of, the elbows are coming out to a certain degree, and then you're trying to drive in together. Of course, we know like a bench press, the trade-off is obviously you're not going to be able to bring your hands right in as you come up, right? But the trade-off is you're going to be able to lift more total weight.
Yep.
So there's going to be trade-offs to everything, but I think in terms of, exercises I would never program, probably the plate press would be the only one. Like again, if you're a beginner, some sort of machine chest press, where I know a lot of gyms don't have a converging one. So I would say that's fine to get strong on to start with. But then, like I said, I would move to a more converging, whether that's, through a cable or through dumbbells as well, or even, like I said, the good old push-up can be really, really useful and effective. Even though, like I said, hands don't move, but you're able to sort of move your scapula a lot more in that one. Back?
Yep. So back for me is a close grip pull down. I find just a lot of people just don't execute it properly, like they don't engage their lats. A lot of the times it's their rhomboids, their traps that take over the movement, and you see them do like a little bit of an ugly shrug. And for a lot of people that have naturally rounded forward postures just from office work and looking at their phones all the time and neck issues, it's like the last thing you need to be doing is getting nice and close and tighten up. You want to actually go nice and wide and really open, especially for thoracic extension as well.
Yeah, I find with that as well, it's going to be person dependent. Like we said, if someone's got massively wide shoulders and you're putting them into a bar that's, that triangle bar that's like this in front of them, and you're trying to keep your elbows, basically locked into the side, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that it's probably going to become less effective and your traps might take over more. So anytime I recommend someone to do more of like a lat focused pull down is I try and get the grip, around that sort of, you either go underhand or neutral, and probably around that shoulder height. It probably can be maybe just in if need be, but that's just going to be a much better position to drive the elbow directly down. Because again, when we're working just the lat, we're trying to just drop the elbow down. We're not worried as much about pulling it back. Of course, if you're someone who's a beginner, lat pull down, you're sort of pulling it back and down towards the top of your chest anyway. But then you can, like I said, start being, I guess, a bit more varied with these sort of things as well. In terms of the back, like, again, it's one of those ones where people, in terms of what people really struggle to execute, I think the barbell row, although I love it as an actual exercise, I think a lot of people don't learn how to hinge properly, right?
Yep.
And so if you can't learn how to hinge properly and hold that position, then you're not going to be able to get to the stage of actually fatiguing your back and making it, some effective reps.
They fatigue their lower back.
Exactly right, yeah. So you want to still be able to have that stuff locked in. And look, again, probably a bit of movement through the barbell row compared to a lot of other exercises is probably fine. But like I said, if you're just hinging back and feeling your lower back straight away, instead of your hamstrings and glutes activating, then you can't hold that position. That's when I'd recommend like a chest supported row instead, using dumbbells, getting a really nice range of motion. And that way you've got, just more tension to be able to push into that extension, or like a seated T-bar row with that as well. I find those are really good exercises. Probably the one I would not so much avoid, but that's all the rage on TikTok, is those like Keenan flaps where you're like your elbows out, you like got a cuff and you're basically just like 90 degreeing it to like into your lat. I don't know if you've seen those.
No.
Yeah, they're real weird.
Specifically for your lat.
Yeah, so you're just like elbow out. Yeah, science-based lifting. So again, like this sort of stuff is not bad because they're finding new ways to to work muscles, right? But I think if you're a teenager coming in, it's like just do a lat pull down and a pull up. If you're going to do some vertical, pulling and then obviously do some sort of rowing movement, and you're going to be fine. It's very easy to just go into this sort of stuff, and I think the reason it's become so popular is because once people, basically what you're doing is you're reducing the moment arm. So, if you're doing a single arm pull down where you have to go all the way there, if you're attaching something at your elbow and going from here to here, you've just reduced the range of motion in half. And yes, the lats lose leverage at certain points and all that shit, but the point we're trying to make...
They need a full stretch.
Well, that's exactly right. So it's finding that position, but people are getting to the point now of just doing like this range of motion where it's like barely at shoulder height, crunching in, coming up, crunching in, coming up. And again, it'll work for certain periods of time, but then you have to think about, okay, what about my shoulder movement? If I'm sitting at a desk all day, I probably need an exercise that's going to fully be able to stretch my lat, like, a proper lat pull down, a full range thing. So these sort of things start coming into it as well. It's not just about, muscle growth and body composition. It's about how does your body function overall, because again, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Shoulders?
Shoulders, sweet.
For me, it's a standing front plate raise where people just hold a plate and they just go like up and back, and they do supersets in between, and just I can tell the person's got no idea what they're doing. It honestly does barely anything.
Cool. So why would you say it does barely anything by using the plate?
So you're not really targeting the shoulders as much as you think you are. You're targeting a lot more of your traps, and you're targeting your core as well and your upper chest by just squeezing and going up. You're also hitting your biceps, your forearms as well, and everything to do with the shoulders. It's like you're maximizing fatigue from like 4 different other muscle groups rather than just sitting down and pressing and hitting the delts that you want to hit.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it comes down to, again, we're not like in that point where you see these people now like strapping themselves down and having like as much tension as possible to be stable.
No seatbelt on the machine.
Yeah, again, and you might get to a point where you just need that to hold you down, right? But for a lot of people, they're, like I said, banding up things so things don't move and that, and it's just getting a bit ridiculous. Like I said, if you want to jump into a shoulder press machine, dumbbells, barbell, anything where you can be chest supported to challenge your front and side delts. And then same with like some sort of lateral raise variation, like instead of a front raise, I find a lateral raise going above. Again, yes, once you get probably past that 90, 100 degrees, you're going to start getting towards the top. You're going to get some shrug, but you're also going to get some more movement through your scapula as well. So it depends what you're trying to train, what you're trying to do. The Arnold press is the only one I would say for me, like I just don't program anymore. I used to like probably 4 or 5 years ago. And again, can it grow your shoulders? Sure. It's not a bad thing. You'll just find by like rotating as you come down, like the way the movement sort of goes, you're just going to lose, I guess, tension and range by rotating when you don't really need to. So just by taking the shoulder through the full range of motion, that's where you're going to get, side delt, front delt, etc. I know you're a big fan of the behind the neck press. Again, that's one that I do like as well, and I think people should be able to eventually get there. But I think for a lot of you, if you're just going to jump in tomorrow and try behind the neck press, you're probably going to wreck yourself and do something to your rotator cuff. So do it sparingly. I always start with like a broom. Make sure I've got that mobility where I can get here without feeling, pain anywhere. Yep. And then you'll be able to bring that up over time as your, thoracic mobility and shoulder mobility improves as well.
This is the thing, right? And I get so much shit for the behind the neck press videos that I make, but at the same time, it's like I didn't start doing them until I was like 19 years into my training career. And I'd done a shit ton of work with a chiropractor for my thoracic, spine, all that stuff. I used to have a lot of issues. Now I can do the behind the neck press pain-free, and I always just thought it was dangerous. And now I'm behind the neck pressing 50 kilos and getting some of the best shoulder gains I've ever seen in my life. So I'm like, is it really a dangerous exercise? Well, no, it actually isolates the shoulders really, really well.
One more thing I will mention is like an upright row variation. So specifically, if you're going like a very narrow type upright row and you're trying to come up, generally speaking, you're just going to be limited, and that's probably just going to lead for a lot of people to some sort of shoulder impingement. So if you're doing some sort of upright row, again, I'm not saying it's a bad exercise. A lot of people just butcher the way they do it. So I'd make sure your hands are at least sort of shoulder width away, and you're just trying to drive those elbows up to a point where you just need to get to 90 degrees. Any more, and you're just going to get a lot more trap, a lot more shrug. And the chance of then that shoulder rolling forward and creating some, potentially some problems or some pain is a lot higher. So that's something that I'd just be cautious of, and just make sure you're doing it properly. You're feeling it where you should, because if you start feeling it again, you're just jamming your shoulder joint into its socket every time and going too far. Again, going to lead to issues down the road as well. So not something I program with clients unless they're generally more intermediate and they know, sort of exactly what they're doing when it comes to their range and things like that as well.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
Legs.
Okay, so I'm actually just going to throw this one in there. It's not an exercise that I dislike, but it's one similar to like the behind the neck press that it's like you can't just jump into, you've got to work your way towards it. And that's a back extension. I see a lot of people mess up the back extension. They don't know if they're, squeezing their glutes right. They don't know if they're working, they've got a lower back pump. They don't know if their hamstrings are stretched. They're like, what is this doing right? But they're like, I got told from my posture that this is a really good exercise. And yes, it is a really good exercise, but it needs to be executed properly. Then you slowly build up while you're holding plates on that one.
Yeah, I think with that as well, like a lot of people will, again, depends what you're using it for. Probably social media has led you to believe now that you shouldn't feel any lower back on them, and it should all be like glutes and hamstrings. And for most people, that's what they need, right? Some posterior chain, glute and hamstring stuff. Everyone's lower back is normally quite strong. But again, if you're using it for the lower back, it's just about finding that range of motion where you can sort of keep that neutral spine. Because otherwise, like I said, as soon as you just go into extension as you're coming up, you're just going to lose all that tension from your glute and hammy. Normally what needs to happen with like the posterior chain work, whether you're deadlifting, hinging, etc., is you want glute, hammy, lower back, sort of in that order. And a lot of people have the order the wrong way around. They feel lower back, hammy, then sort of glute at the end. So that comes from, probably shape of your pelvis and a couple of other things as well. And probably just some technique work with breathing and probably tightness through the hips and things like that as well. In terms of legs, there's nothing that I really dislike like crazy. The only thing I would probably say is potentially like a sissy squat or something like that for someone who generally has some knee issues. I know there's just been a big, social media, that knees over toes guy. It's like push your knee over toe, push your knee over toe. And it's not a bad thing. Again, we want to slowly increase range because then we can do it safely. But if you're going straight from never squatting or barely squatting with a dumbbell to just doing sissy squats and driving your knees over your toes excessively, chances are, your knees are going to start hurting. You're going to start getting some issues down the road. So it just needs to be programmed appropriately. Like I said, nothing's necessarily a really bad exercise. There's just things that'll probably give you less or more stimulus depending on what you're trying to do, which is why leg-wise we really like, locking into machines, finding a certain range of movement, and then any sort of split squat I find is a really, really good alternative there as well, especially with some rotation to really get into your hip. I find those are fantastic. The only one I would not recommend is squatting on a Bosu ball. That does absolutely fucking nothing. Yeah. And people will say, oh no, it's for stability. It's like you're stable, like your feet are on the ground. Like you'll be stable during a squat if you keep tension and pressure through your feet. Unless you're doing some sort of high level ankle rehab, I would not be going anywhere near a Bosu ball or squatting on it or doing any of that shit.
I mean, same could go for pistol squats, right?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah,
but
I guess.
Assisted ones are great. But when are you going to be programming weighted pistol squats for someone, right? Unless they're 10 years into an athletic program. Yeah,
high level athletic program potentially could be useful. But for your general population person who just wants to get a bit stronger. One thing I will mention, which is probably a bit underrated, is going into a more lateral plane, like a Cossack squat side to side. I know I've been doing them recently since my hips have been cooked for years. And it really has helped just in terms of function and feel and rotation and that sort of stuff. So it does go beyond, just frontal plane sort of back and forth movement. I think as you get over time, some sort of side to side, movement will be really, really useful. And same with the obliques, like any sort of training through the obliques now, feel free to add a side plank, but you're actually dropping your hip down, touching the ground, coming back up. Those sort of things will really help as well.
Or should we section into abs then if we're talking about side planks?
Great idea.
Because one of mine is planks. Think about it, right? From a muscular hypertrophy standpoint, right? Because the abs and the core is a muscle in itself. Holding a plank for, 5-10 minutes, all these people with these world records of 9 hours, all that stuff like that. It's just it doesn't actually do that much for your core. Now, yes, it's tough and it's good for your posture and it's challenging and, everything's shaking, right? But for specific muscular hypertrophy, you're much better getting contraction from a lying leg raise or a hanging leg raise or using a medicine ball between your knees to contract, take your hips out of it and contract your core. I just find they're a lot better, even an ab cable crunch with some actual resistance, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think the spine's designed to move, and a lot of people, same thing, who have lower back pain probably have really weak abs, so they just don't move their abs and their spine and diaphragm. So something like that will be really useful for a lot of clients. If I'm ever going to prescribe any sort of plank at the start, it's normally just to teach them how to turn their core on. So the first phase might be okay, we're going to start with the plank, right? We're going to teach you to turn your core on, so you sort of feel that, and then when we start getting into that, squats, bench, deadlift, you start to feel hey, I can start engaging my core and using that. But then, I'm always going to move them then away from that into something more dynamic, like a bird dog, that sort of thing, just to get things moving, but teach them how to keep tension under their core, and then obviously being able to then train their abs close to, if not on failure. I think it's a really good opportunity.
Did you mean dead bug?
Yeah, dead bug. That's
I was like, what? Yeah, bird dog.
Oh, bird dog, dead, but they're very similar. Bird dog's the other way around, where you're reaching on all fours. Dead bug's on the ground, reaching on all fours.
I know the difference.
Yeah, so both
I've just
very
never heard someone refer to it as a bird dog.
Bird dog is on all fours that way. Dead bug's on your back, so it makes sense. Dead bug, obviously. Calves, is there anything you would recommend from, or would not recommend? I think it's more in how you do them. I think a lot of people just bounce.
It really depends, right? Because calves are one of those ones where it's like you can actually get very strong very quick, and people, don't realize they're not actually contracting their muscle. They're just going on their tippy toes up and down. It's like, are you actually lengthening and contracting your soleus and your gastrocnemius, which are the two main primary calf muscles? So I find in that stretch position, the best exercise for that is if you go on a neutral leg press and like push out, and I'm actually doing it here, but you can't see it on camera. But if there's any bad ones, I mean, I think a lot of people do get the seated calf raise wrong. I don't think that they actually do it correctly as if they should. I think they're just literally just raising their knees up and down, a lot of people.
Yeah, as opposed to, I think, like you said, it's more of a technique issue I find with calves, because they respond really well to that sort of deep stretch and holds and things like that. So when you're doing that seated, like, it's very easy to just, a lot of people will come up a little bit and they just go back to neutral. There's no actual, stretch at the bottom. But a leg press one I really like, because you're able to get a really deep range and stretch. So if you feel like your calves aren't growing, I'd prioritize them first. And then I'd really focus on like a 2-3 second stretch and like a 2-3 second hold really deep in that stretch, and do that frequently and progress that, and you'll find your calves should start growing a lot more there. What have we missed?
Probably arms.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Arms. All right, sweet.
Arms is the only one, really.
Yeah, so arms, I think, again, everyone's going to be sort of different with this and how they do it. I think, again, it's how you're executing the movement. And then a lot of people will start using cables and going over your head and stuff, which, again, it's going to hit different areas. Probably the tricep kickback is the one exercise that I'd not ever program unless someone really enjoyed it. But you find, you're kicking back, there's peak tension there, and then as you're coming back, there's basically zero tension. So ideally, you want something with a bit of a better resistance profile. Don't think it's necessarily a bad exercise, but if you're going to do that, you can just do like a single arm tricep push down, and you probably get a lot more out of it from a muscle growth perspective. Biceps, look, there's nothing anything that sort of really cramps you up. So like if you're doing an alternating curl, I'd make sure you sort of turn into that side slightly, just so you can think about wrist, elbow, and shoulder all lined up. If anyone gets some elbow issues or feels a bit of pain through that sort of thing, I think that's a really good one.
Yep.
Anything else?
Yeah, I would say a straight bar cable curl. Mainly just, I see a lot of people, because those straight bars, they actually go quite narrow like that. And when people are curling up, that's when they start getting, even you can see me from doing this contraction here, my elbows get turned right in and my traps are starting to get engaged. And I see a lot of people start swinging back and forth, and they're getting a lot of front shoulder and then trap and neck involvement, which, it does happen in the biceps when you train it regardless, but I find they get too much when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think a really good thing with that is I've had issues like Liam said with that sort of elbow pain just from using the straight bar. So using some sort of easy bar could really help. But a good thing is you can put your hands to your side and you can just think about, if you're coming up, a lot of people won't go straight up. They'll naturally just come in a little bit, and that'll be that sort of range that you want to try and adopt. If you think about where you're just naturally moving towards, of course, most people's shoulders are rolled forward a bit, so it's probably going to lead to a bit more internal rotation, but again, that can help. And then if you're doing even like a single arm preacher curl, instead of being straight on like that, you can sort of lean into it and turn away. And again, that's going to line up that sort of shoulder, elbow, bicep, and just make sure that everything's aligned and the biceps working as hard as possible.
Anything for triceps apart from kickbacks for you?
I find triceps, you got your overhead stuff, still don't mind skull crusher variations, things like that, anything that can extend overhead. And then you just standard push downs and dips, I find are your sort of money makers there. I
find that standing tricep sort of with the straight bar overhead extensions, when people don't do it over the head, they do it in front. So I just saw a guy this morning, he was standing cable and he was just going like this the whole time. But you could just tell the whole time his traps and neck were really struggling, and it was getting a lot more involvement, and his triceps were not saying they're not doing anything, but you could just do a Apollo compress and just do standard, and then all of that traps and rhomboids and shoulders get taken out of it, and it purely just isolates the triceps. and you're a lot more stable, which will increase your motor unit threshold. So, and standing also, you've got unilaterally because you've got one leg forward, one leg back, and it's like, do you swap between sets? Like, how does it work? Like a lot of people, it's just like, a lot of people do a lot of standing exercises. This is probably just a takeaway for a lot of exercises in the podcast that we mentioned.
If you're strong enough.
Yeah, if you're strong enough, it's just like you don't have to stand, right? Like, if you're doing a standing behind the neck press compared to a seated one, it's like, which one are you going to be stronger at, right? And what's your goal? Is your goal to get stronger, or is your goal to, look cool while you're training because you're standing up?
Yeah. And again, like I said, it depends on the goal. It goes back to your goal. But this podcast was really just about how to identify a few things and go, okay, is this exercise really good for me at the moment? Or is it not? And again, comes down to mechanics, comes down to your goals, comes down to what you want to do. So if you guys have any questions, if you're not sure on anything, if you're like, oh, is the program I'm doing probably all right for me or not? Feel free to reach out to myself or Liam at Action Fitness Nutrition, at Coach Liam C. Murphy on Instagram. We'll be able to have a quick look through, see if it's actually good. And you can even send us some videos. Like, we're more than happy to help out, give you some free coaching if you want to send us a video and be like, oh, yeah, am I doing this exercise right? Like, is this good for me? And we can be like, oh no, like, you don't have the range to do that yet. Or I'd probably just focus on this, depending on what you're lifting, how you're progressing, and all those sort of things as well. But I think that covers it.
I was going to say cardio, but...
yeah. Well, what about cardio?
Like specific, is there any cardio machines or things? If we're talking about bodily mechanics, right? Like some people, some people are built for running. Some people like the elliptical. Some people like the conditioning bike. I know you're a big fan. I'm a real big fan of the Stairmaster.
I think it's just doing what you enjoy, provided, like I said, there's no pain and you're able to get a sweat on. And knowing that, just cardio by itself isn't going to lead to fat loss. We know that goes with nutrition, training, etc. Only thing I'd say is probably try and keep training and any sort of intense cardio away from each other, just because it's probably going to send two different signals to the brain. But again, if you're like training and then you just go, oh, I'm just going to go for a 15-minute walk on the treadmill, like, no problem at all. I just wouldn't do some really high intensity stuff and then try and train, or vice versa, because one's going to favour the other and one's going to be a lot less effective.
Yep. Oh, well, that sums it up.
Beautiful. All right. Looking forward to the next podcast, guys. In the next one, we are going to be talking about the difference between food quality and calories. So really good one. Keep an eye out for that one, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.